a martial arts movie podcast.
I threw that shit before I walked in the room.
Featuring drunken Thai boxer, Will.
Too bad you will die.
The also drunken wrestler, Mark.
I said I don't want trouble.
And drunken karate master, Zero.
You've lost your balls.
And now,
I know Kung Fu. You know, baby.
Fists of Fail.
The title itself is so not PC. Just saying it alone, we probably would. If this was on YouTube, we'd get demonetized right away. Right.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying crippled. I mean,
No.
this could have been like
immediately I see
R-word.
the money just leaving our wallets right now.
Well, it's not like this movie is called like R-word Avengers, right?
Oh man. Well, there is. Okay, I don't want to jump ahead because we do have some handy-capable revenge seekers, which is the movie we're talking about today.
That would be like probably the most PC way of saying this movie title.
Oh well,
But hey, it's Crippled Avengers.
Crippled Avengers, or the alternative title is The Return of the Five Venoms. And do you know why it's called that, Zero?
I'm going to take a guess. Maybe I'm right. But from what I've been hearing people saying about Shaw Brothers films is I think after the Five Deadly Venoms films, those actors got popular. And so they kind of did a bunch of movies together. Is that okay?
Yeah. Exactly. You can think of these are their core five members that were the original ones. They're considered like the Rat Pack of the old school kung fu genre. So the first movie that they were all together in was the Five Deadly Venoms, which we might cover one day. Actually, wondering if we should have covered that instead of this movie, but whatever. We're doing this now.
Yeah.
But that movie actually made sense in calling why they're called the five Venoms. It actually ties in with the plot. But then as just their titles were just got attached to who those actors were. They just got them together again for this movie and future movies. Like I think there's like over 12 different movies. And they're just called the Venoms. Going forward, they're the Venom Mob or Venom Gang. So, like, even though there's nothing related to Venom in this movie, that's why the alternative title for some of you listening who's familiar with this movie is Return of the Five Venoms. But really, it's about the crippled Avengers because that's what this movie's about. And they say the word crippled quite often in this film because it is the 70s. It is 79. So that's the language that we're going to work with. Yeah. All right, so Zero. I know we haven't covered many Shaw Brothers movies, and
That's correct.
I've seen a couple of them, but I still consider myself a Shaw Brothers newbie. So we wanted to do this to cover our bases, like cover more old school kung fu movies.
Yeah, you could say that. Well, you did say that, but you're correct. I have not seen basically any Shaw Brothers films. I grew up watching more like the 80s, 90s martial arts films from Hong Kong. Right. And as an enthusiast, I'd like to go backwards. I think, so we've spoken about 36 Chambers together in a podcast episode, and I love that. But I know that is a kind of like golden standard for the Shaw Brothers films. Mm-hmm. And I hear a lot of times that, they made a lot of movies, so there's a lot of stinkers in there as well. So you kind of have to be careful with choosing certain Shaw Brothers movies. So I did reach out to the internet asking for some suggestions.
Reddit.
And Reddit did help. A lot of people suggested this movie because I did specify, could you give us something with some unique fights? Because that's kind of what we do. We break down the fights. So
there's our intro stinger.
Yeah, pretty much. So I wanted something unique. And whether or not we got that, they did deliver what I was asking for. I'll say.
That's true. That's true. This movie is definitely a tie between this and Legendary Weapons of China, which I think that was in the running as well, but we decided to put that in the background or the back burner because we've covered a lot of Lo Ga, and we've already covered Gordon Liu. I mean, Gordon Liu's gonna get enough attention in the future, but we definitely need to cover the 5 Venoms. And I am going to say all their names now because I am not going to be able to remember them later. We have the 5 Venoms themselves are FoF. We have Sun Xian, and we have Sheng Qiang. So I'm not gonna say those names anymore because those two I'm kind of constantly confused with one another. And we also have Lo Mang, who was actually one of the few members of the group that actually branched outside of the Shaw Brothers sphere and actually made a career for themselves and still is active today. You might see him in movies like Ip Man 2, for example, Ip Man 4, whatever. And then we have Feng Liu. The Feng Liu in this particular movie plays the villain. He is the son of the warlord, played by Quan Tai Chan. Okay, so now that I've put all these names out there, I am just gonna call them by what their handicap is because there's no other way. I was
gonna do that.
Oh, you're gonna? Okay, you can do that.
Yeah, I thought you were going to call them by their names, and I was going to say, well, who's the blind guy? Look, who's the mute?
Zero. I'm Chinese, and I can't fucking remember these names. Okay, so I don't. There's no fucking way. Yeah, so let's just call them for what they are. So Lo Mang plays. It's not spoilers. There's no really crazy spoiler twisty things going on in the movie. Like the setup is immediately that these people are crippled by Feng Liu, who originally has no arms, but he gets these bionic arms. And each one of them has their own characteristic, right? So Philip Kwok, he's the one who's blind, right? Lo Mang, wait, Zero, you're doing this. You're fucking doing this. Lo Mang, he's the wait, you don't know these fucking names, so I guess I'll continue.
Yeah, you have to do it. I don't know their names. I don't know the actors' names. Mm-hmm. I don't know the characters' names in the film. Right. I was just gonna call them. Okay, well, there's the blind dude, then there's the mute guy.
Right.
Then there's no legs.
No legs.
Then there's no brain.
Right. No brain. Okay. Yeah.
Is that it?
All right.
I think that's it, right?
That's right. Well,
there's 4.
The mute and the deaf is played by Lo Mang. Sheng Qiang plays the special one, and Sun Qian plays damn, I forgot. Oh no, he has no legs. That's the no legs guy. Yes, there you go. All right. Now that we stated all their handicaps, now we can just call them out by what their physical attributes are, because they really. Not that they don't have any character, right? Because I think that some of these characters, do exhibit some exuberance, right? So, for example, the no-brain one. I don't know how else to put this. I'm trying to be as PC as possible.
Right. Well, they call him the idiot too in the subtitles sometimes, or we can call him the fool. But I like the no-brain.
No-brain. Oh man, we can call him no-brain. Oh, I mean, they cripple him by putting some sort of vice around his neck, around his skull. Yeah, and then they crack it to a point where
they crack it to the point where they make a normal, sane man mentally challenged.
Right. Yes. But he's probably the only fun one of the group, right? Because everyone else is so serious, and one's a little bit more, stoic. Except for Lo Mang, who plays the brute. I mean, his whole thing is that he's before he becomes mute by drinking this poison that causes him to lose his voice and being smacked in the ears really hard that he bleeds out and can't hear anymore. He was the super boisterous one. So there's a character, some very, very small character arc, and a bit of irony in each one of their fates, right?
Yeah, because he was kind of cocky and boastful, and now they take away his voice, and in addition, they take away his hearing. I don't really know if that has anything to do with his character, but it helps to disable him even further.
Yeah. We were joking. We're oh, he lost his voice. I mean, he could still fight.
Yeah.
It's like, what does that do? What's the problem with that? Yeah, so we have our two other, well, I mean, like, in regards to how the story actually progresses, like, one of them loses his legs because he bumps into Feng Lu.
Yeah, that doesn't really tie into character at all.
No, absolutely not.
It would have been great if he was like some sort of can dancer or like a river dance person, and then he cuts off his legs and he's like, no, my life.
It's in ancient China.
Now. Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, those are the physical attributes and even the actual character attributes of each of these performers. But yeah, there's the story is very bare bones, as is with most Shaw Brothers movies. In fact, it's almost as if there's like a Xerox machine of how you should pace your Shaw Brothers movie. What is the story about?
There's definitely a template to these films. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So so I want to say, like, before watching this movie, I watched a trailer. And in my mind, I was like filling in all these things that you could do with people with disabilities. So like, I think I accidentally amped myself up for this movie. So I was like, oh wow, you got a guy who's blind, a guy with no legs, a guy who's deaf. I was just kind of imagining the different types of things that you could potentially, like the different kinds of fights you could put them in.
Yeah.
And we can discuss like a little later, but like I guess I was kind of disappointed with what I saw because in my head it got built up.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I definitely get that. Like when we were watching this together, I didn't see certain things that you were imagining, but once you explained it to me, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Why didn't they do that? But yeah, we'll go into detail with that. What is the story, Zero?
So, yeah, I don't know anybody's names. There's this guy. There's this son and a mother who get attacked, and I don't know for what reason. Maybe you could fill it in. Maybe we don't even need to explain it.
They're rich. They're basically rich, and these people were just petty, and they wanted to.
Okay, so basically, their home gets attacked by people with weapons. They decide to cut off the mother's legs and then cut off the son's arms. The father comes home and kind of witnesses this. He breaks it all up. And what happens is he makes hands for his son, because he just lost them. And it kind of fast forwards really quickly. And it shows him as an older man wearing these like black gauntlets, like, like a knight gauntlets. And he's kind of now very proficient in martial arts. And actually, the gauntlet fingertips have the ability to shoot out like weapons.
Like darts, yeah.
Pretty much. And what happens is the father, he gathers up the people who were involved with wronging the family way back when. And he gives the son the opportunity to then cripple them.
Right.
So here's where the story kind of lost me. I thought these people were going to be the crippled Avengers.
Right, but the movie would only be like 30 minutes long if we started off this way, right?
Well, so the thing is, like, the son takes care of these guys and then cripples them, and then that's it. We never hear from these people again. I was kind of hoping that the story was going to be the son got his revenge on these people who crippled him, and it was going to be a fine line of, like, who is the bad guy now? Like, you have these new crippled people, and I was going to guess it was going to be them struggling with their disability, taking up the martial arts, and then getting like reverse revenge on the son. And it was going to be one of those gray things where like, who's really the bad guy here? Because, no one is really the bad guy in that situation.
Right. You're asking for a lot of depth in a Shaw Brothers movie. There really isn't that much. Not that there's no thought in it, but there's no layers to this. Yes, this whole scene could be completely taken out because with the context of what the scene gives you, you're thinking, oh, this will come back later. It doesn't.
Well, it's kind of upsetting because it sets up the son, who was a sympathetic figure because his arms got cut off. it now sets them as the bad guys. And I didn't want that at all. It feels weird that he himself is a crippled and now he's a villain.
Right.
Like they literally turned him into the villain at this point in the movie.
Oh, him and his really goofy, deep voice in the English dub. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yes, I think it's to show how ruthless and how brutal he is. And like whoa, I can hear the movie coming from you. That almost sounded like porn, Zero.
Sorry, I was accidentally turned on my porn in the background.
All right, so while you're watching Crippled Avenger porn?
Well, it was actually the moment when the son's hands got cut off.
Well, anyways, whoa. I don't know what you're into, man. Yeah, so I think that this scene, I mean, if you had all the time in the world, this scene could have worked if they shot it differently, right? So what I mean by that is we take each of the individual Venoms losing their ability, some sort of sense or whatever, like losing a limb, losing whatever. Like instead of having that all happen like in sequence, we would have that just capture each one of them doing something wrong and then put them in one room together, and then like have Feng Lu torture each one of them and like by removing each one of them like in one room rather than having a sequence of scenes. But you know what? That is actually not even a nitpick. I don't think that's even necessary. The better alternative is just to completely remove the scene. It's completely unnecessary. I actually like the turnaround of the like how Feng Lu like takes out each person and tortures them, each one of them, and removes each of their sights, because it sets them up as like they don't know how to fight. They don't know how to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
And if you all put them in a room, it would be a problem, because the last guy, is a very wise and very articulate man, but he becomes the crazy guy. This guy actually knows how to fight, right? We actually get one of our first real fight scenes in the movie because of him, and I think that it's like important that we have this fight, because otherwise it would just be like well, when's the next guy gonna get crippled? When's the next guy gonna get crippled? They have to break it up with something that's a little bit more actiony.
We're talking about Mr. No.
No, Mr. No Brain. Okay. We don't have names for these guys. We just have characteristics. Yeah. So at the good.
So one thing I just want to add with this movie too is I was really frustrated watching this film, because we have these four characters who are all disabled. And yes, you can kind of figure out who they are by their physical disability. The problem is they all rock the same hairstyle, and then at some points they all rock the same type of clothing, like a white gi or garment. Their hair is pulled back into like a top knot, and it's very long, flowing in the back. They all look the same. I'm not trying to say all Chinese people look the same.
Oh no, but we
when
do.
All your characters look the same in terms of your makeup and your hairstyle and your wardrobe, unless you have very, very keen eyes, like it was so hard to differentiate these people.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like their eyebrows were all shapen, so they all look like they're semi-angry. So sometimes you can't even tell who's a villain and who's a bad guy.
Yeah, for somebody who's never seen the Five Deadly Venoms, and now to see all these actors looking and dressed up very similarly, it was like these could have been anybody. It didn't have to be the Five Deadly Venoms. They could have just been like random guy off the street. So like I wish that they even just color coded them, something to make it easier.
Right. Well, there are times in the movie where it's more obvious that they did that, and sometimes they don't even try. Everyone's wearing the same garb because they're once it gets to the school, which is at the halfway moment of the film. I mean, we'll get to it when we get to it, but like when we actually talk about the fights. But up to that point, I feel like everyone had a distinct kind of clothing, and then get to the school and everyone's wearing white.
Yeah. It was kind of easy to tell them apart a little bit, but the hairstyle was not helping at all.
Yeah, Lo Mang's the only one who, of the five Venoms, actually stood out, but that's because he didn't wear a shirt half the time.
Right.
And as is all the movies that he's ever in. Right, but this first one with no brain, god damn it, Jesus Christ, it's never gonna not be funny and fucked up at the same time. Is between, well, it starts off with between him and Wang Longwei, who what's also named Johnny Wang. Yeah, this guy also like is known for playing mostly villainous characters in like millions of films. So this is a good, like showcase of what kind of fighting we're gonna have for the rest of the film, because everything up to this point was really short spats, as in like just showcases of like what the people are going to be doing, but there was not really any real fighting up to this point. Now we're actually having fighting, and it's very much similar to opera, right? Operatic fighting. Right? This definitely doesn't look like real people duking it out. It looks like a dance. And we always say this, right? Like a good fight choreography, modern fight choreography. I mean, it is still choreography, right? So they're basically dancing, but making it look like they're fighting. Here, there's no semblance that they're fighting, at least to our modern eye, right?
Right. So as I rewatched it, I started to notice that there are definitive moments in these choreographed fight scenes, and I put quotes around that, where you can see where it looks like dance choreography. There are a lot of times when two people will move simultaneously instead of one person moving and then the other person reacting to it. That's where it looks like a dance to me. And I don't want to discredit any of the performers doing the quote unquote choreography, because they are nailing it. It's very nice on screen. But I think for me personally, what's lacking is it never looks like two people are trying to fight each other.
Right.
It looks like two people are fighting like next to each other at times, like at best. Like this is a little more evident in the end of the movie, but there's a lot of times where it looks like somebody is not swiping at their enemy. It looks like they're swiping like almost above them, giving them the opportunity to duck so that they're not going to hurt them. Right. And this is very indicative of the times, because these are the earlier martial arts films. They're still kind of figuring out how to do all this stuff in a faster pace. So I don't really knock it for that. But I think for me personally, these aren't the fights I like, because I've watched more modern stuff. And I've always said on this podcast, I was always kind of scared of going backwards into these films because I've seen the modern stuff. And will I still be able to like now the stuff that got derived from that, or they derived from?
Right. So, I mean, I would always consider movies coming from this era to be the golden age of martial arts films. So I'm very lenient on it for that. But yes, you are absolutely right. It never feels like fighting, but it comes with the territory, right? So production value is a lot lower, so they just have these really long wides. Really long wides, and that last very long time with uninterrupted, like no cuts at all, and that actually can get a little bit tiring on the eyes sometimes. But because I do appreciate the level of effort that went into it, like given that it's a little bit more primitive compared to today's standards, I will say there's still a lot of great timing in this, and great showcases of athleticism, right? So in the second half of this fight, no arms, bionic arms comes into the fray, and it becomes him versus soon to be no brain, and it turns into their fight, and. And there's so many, there's a lot of like back handsprings and like butterfly kicks, but there's like no purpose to them. Like no arms does a butterfly kick, but he does a butterfly kick, but there's no reason for him to do it. He just does it because it's part of the choreography.
Right. The problem the thing is, like, these performers are really good at doing these fanciful kicks, but the problem is it never looks like they're throwing it at their opponent. It's like, I'm doing this kick and the guy is just kind of moving out of the way. And sometimes it looks like he's the guy doing the butterfly kick is like going towards his opponent, but it doesn't always work, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah. You were mentioning before that it looks like sometimes they're just swiping the sword or whatever weapon around them rather than at them, which it's very evident now. But I still commend it because there's a moment where No Arms is somehow doing back handsprings, like a sequence of back handsprings. And soon to be No Brain takes his sword and he's like swiping at him and just missing. But you can kind of tell he's not anywhere close to actually hitting him.
Yeah, and he has to miss. You don't want to hit your guy doing back handsprings.
Right. I will say though, this is something that I don't see much with modern martial arts movies. That I think that you always want to end your shot we want to end your shot with something more glamorous, a little bit more flashy. That's how you cap it off, right? I feel like in the Shaw Brothers era of martial arts movies, they didn't have that concept down yet. They will throw the most fancy, flashy things in the middle of the choreography and not dwell on it, right? So like,
right,
he'll do a backflip and then just the choreography keeps going. It's like, well, no, that was a backflip. Show off the backflip. Like let's focus on that. But
that's really interesting. I started to notice stuff like that. Yeah, we've kind of said this before, where at least for me anyway, I like the fights to end on those big notes, that kind of exclamation point for the sentence. Right. And it's weird because when you put them in the middle of the sentence, exclamation points don't belong, in between words of a sentence. This is all over the place.
Yeah, right. I mean, this kind of... Well, I mean, this fight ends with him like doing a front flip, and then they just throw a ball and chain at his feet, and then that fight's over.
Right. So I want to rewind a little bit to where No Brain fights the guy with a ball and chain. Mm-hmm. So one thing I noticed, when the fight first happens, it is pretty fast. It does kind of look like a decent fight is like a decent fight that I like is kind of unfolding, because his sword swipes are pretty quick. The guy with the ball and chain is still spinning it around very fast, and he's dodging at a really good speed. Right. But there's a point in the fight though where it becomes looking like two people are really fighting into where they're dancing. Right. And I don't know why this happened, because it started out pretty neat. Right. But then what happens is they kind of start like the guy with the ball and chain wraps up No Brain's sword, and he starts spinning him around, encircling him. And it's at that point where the fight then becomes more of a dance, and it never recovers for some reason.
Right.
It's really weird. If you go back and rewatch it, I'm just thinking like, oh, like now it's a dance. Now he's just cartwheeling. Now their speed is considerably slower. So I wonder if they shot this fight sequentially, like in order. And maybe like they went all out in the beginning, and then now in the middle they just kind of have to take their time because they're maybe just they don't have energy.
Right, maybe. I don't think that they would have done that for cost reasons. Because they probably just like, okay, you did that sequence, cut. We're gonna move the camera. But I mean, there's a possibility that they did something of that sort. But not like it's like one continuous cut, right? But I don't know. I will say one thing that's kind of distracting, but not really, are all the extras just standing in the background, just like encircling them with their swords. But
it's okay, because you know what though. It was never supposed to be a one versus many. Mm-hmm. These guys are just kind of getting a paycheck for lunch or something. So.
Right. Yeah. So now all of them are actually disabled. Mm-hmm. Right. So with our disabled Avengers decide to go on a adventure to go find a Sifu, someone who can teach them how to get their avengement against the ones who have wronged them. So they go into the mountains because they've learned that Mr. No Brain, now he's actually Mr. No Brain, has we're gonna totally get demonetized. Mr. No Brain, well, he knows martial arts and he still knows his kung fu, even though he's No Brain. So they're like, oh well, we just have to follow him and into the mountains where he clearly knows the path to, so maybe we can learn the secret that he knows. So once they get there, we get our montage sequence, right? We each one of them learns or gets some sort of prosthetic.
Well, they get training in order to balance their new disability, right?
Right.
So you have the guy who's blind, and they need to improve his hearing. Mm-hmm. So he's throwing like darts at leaves. I don't know how that works. So I think I messed up by watching 36 Chambers first, because I feel like that movie just did everything right in terms of what I wanted with a montage. Like, hey, like, we're showing you this because it's going to come back later, and it's going to be very obvious how it comes back later.
Right.
This blind man who is throwing darts at leaves, I don't know how that comes back later, and I don't think it did.
Right. Oh man, yeah, you brought something up that really upset me once you told me what it was. So Lo Mang, the only one of the Venoms I actually know his name. The muscular.
Which one is he?
The one without hearing or and no voice.
So the mute.
Or they call him the dumb one. I didn't know that colloquialism. Like, apparently if you're mute, you're dumb.
If you're mute, oh, that's right. Yeah, we were talking
that.
about this when we were watching it.
He's like deaf and dumb. I guess that's where the phrase comes. Anyways, so his method of training is he's hitting these sandbags that are around him, right? And he's looking in the mirror at the same time. Never really got the mirror thing, but no, the mirror thing does come back into play because he does eventually carry a mirror with him everywhere he goes. So like he's never caught off guard. But the one method of training is that, obviously he wants to train his eyes, so he can be quick with them. There is a giant spinning wheel on fire, and each time they kind of set the thing up in more fire. And I feel like this was never really set up in a way that felt satisfying, because you want to see a training montage as a sequence of them progressing, right? You want to see them start off not really knowing how to, cope with it, and then eventually becoming masters of their craft. Him, like, he's really good at just punching through this wheel from the get-go. So, like, when they show the progression, there is no progression. He's still capable of doing it. So it's like, where's the progress? Like, why do I need to see this again?
Yeah, they show it to us like 3 times, and each time I'm like, okay, what is he gonna get better at? Nothing. He got it the first time, so we didn't need to see it so many times.
Well, because it's a spinning wheel, and inside there's an axle, right? So there's a chance that he can get his arm caught. He can get hit on, his arm could get lit on fire, and he just has to act really quickly. So the first time he does it, his hand just stays in there way too long, and it doesn't look realistic whatsoever.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, like, again, like he did it the first time, so I was like, where's the progress? Where's the progress here? Whereas the other two performers or the other people training here, I felt like theirs made a little bit more sense. Except, I don't know, I think the one who had no sight, his was probably the most interesting, just because like he was doing the most flips. Right.
He was doing the most flips.
Yeah, like there's it's really impressive because they're tossing him rings, just like these brass rings, one at a time, and they get progressively smaller and smaller. And this guy's like doing flips, and in midair, he's looping these rings around his neck and his legs before he lands. And again, these rings keep getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, I don't understand how that makes you be better at being blind, for lack of words.
Well, I don't know.
I don't think they throw rings at like the school for the blind and like, hey, now you can see.
Right. You know what? That's a good point, because not that they throw rings at the blind at schools. What I don't get how he could hear the rings, right? Because
I guess that's what they were trying to imply. Like he needed to improve his hearing for something being thrown at him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I don't like how it comes back into play. It doesn't really make sense. Right. And if anything, so he's kind of getting proficient at grabbing these rings that are being thrown at him in the air. And what they're really setting up is him and No Brain are kind of connected by one ring, and it becomes them being able to move off of each other's movements, I guess you could say. So like they're both holding onto the ring at the same time, and they're able to kind of like flip each other.
Yeah.
So they're kind of moving as one. I thought that was interesting. I don't think it really made sense in terms of helping a blind man out.
Yeah. You make a good point there. But they're doing all these physically impressive things, Zero. Very impressive.
It looks impressive. I just wish it clicked for me. You know, like it works for this movie because later they get rings again conveniently at the end of the movie, and then they can reenact this whole thing again. You know, sure, I give it a pass for that, but like it didn't really logically work
That's
for me.
you just gotta throw that logic out the window. This movie is like watching Cirque du Soleil. Sometimes it's like, well, they stopped fighting. Now they're just doing flips.
So what were you gonna say? You said like I revealed something, and I.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring it up later. I want to circle back to it.
Sure.
So I don't know when it is.
Yeah, just bring it up later.
Yeah, remind me. It has something to do with Lo Mang, or not Lo Mang, because you're not going to remember that name. It has to do with the spinning wheel, and I think we know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
all right.
So just maybe just to cap it off, no legs gets legs, and suddenly he can jump like tall heights and break wooden dummies' arms and legs off, and he's no longer a crippled anymore. It feels like they should have like shunned him from their group because he's now a normal man, technically.
Right. Well, you see that this guy like he has these brass, well, like I don't know what the metallic rigid legs. He shouldn't be able to jump. That's the thing.
Oh man, that would have been great if. So yes, he can walk now. He has really strong legs, but they're so weighted down. He's very limited in mobility.
Right.
That would have been great because that would have, just added to his handicap. Like, okay, you can walk now, and you're no longer, bound to this wheelbarrow like he was in the beginning. But he literally can't jump. He can barely kick. He would have to rely maybe on his upper body.
Yeah, they definitely didn't do that. Well, all I know of this particular actor is that he's known for his kicking. So it kind of makes sense that they gave him this handicap. Because, let's give the kicking guy the most, the metal legs. Although I will say, they vastly underutilized this one character.
Well, I think they might have realized the issue they gave with this guy by returning his legs to him. Not literally, but with these prosthetics. He was no longer really crippled. He was now just a normal guy who could have just taken on anybody, and they actually make him overpowered if you think about it. So he kind of gets written out of the movie until they need him.
Yeah. No, basically, it's kind of like what this he's kind of underutilized in a sense. But even setting him up in the montage sequence, I felt like he's barely really in it. He's so crippled. Jesus Christ, I can't believe I just said that. He's so disabled for a majority of the montage that all of a sudden he's really fucking good, and it's like, wow, I can't wait to see him, and he's not in the movie until like the very very end of the film when they need a trump card.
Exactly. He's this movie's Deus Ex Machina. When they need somebody to get killed, he comes in. He's like, "Ha-ha! My legs are iron."
Hey, don't worry about that. All that stuff between no brain and no eyes, like that stuff is interesting. Like in terms of, because it's a visual spectacle. I actually like a lot of that stuff there. It's completely pointless. Or maybe not pointless.
I enjoyed it until I realized it didn't come to fruition the way I wanted.
Yeah, right. There's like it's kind of excessive in a way because like they just end up doing like a sequence of not backflip, butterfly kicks over and over, and they do that again at the end of the film, like you said before. But it's like, why do you need to do that? You don't need to do that. But whatever. Anyways, we're done with the montage sequence. It's nowhere near the level of 36 Chambers, like you said, which predates this movie by a year. But who cares? Now we're finally back in the village, right? So we have our first fight, and this features Philip Kwok, blind man, versus the guy with the ball and chain. And this is supposedly 3 years later, so they had all this time to get really fucking good. And I don't know, I like this fight a little bit, but I will say, and this is not me trying to jump the gun for the sake of jumping the gun, the way this fight ends.
So, are we gonna skip fights? Because I think you might have missed
Which one are you talking about?
So, when they first go to the tavern and the guy, the blind man, is kind of poking his little flag all over the place, and he sits down with the men.
Yeah, this is the same one I'm talking about.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did I miss something?
No, blind man. The blind dude goes into the tavern, and he's fighting he's not fighting the guy with the ball.
That's where I get confused.
Guy. It's not. He doesn't have the ball.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, I was watching this. I was like, "There's no ball and chain."
No. But now we have to give him some sort of physical attribute. So,
right.
Normal guy. The normal guy, mustache man. There we go, mustache man.
Okay.
He's Johnny Wang, but we're just gonna call him Mustache Man because none of us are gonna remember this.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a pretty fun fight. There's nothing too spectacular about it, but it's fun in that you can really see the progression that this character has gone through. He's actually kind of what I perceive to be the main character because we have so many fights with him.
Yeah, I was going to say, upon rewatching the fights, I noticed he's I think he's in every one from this point on. Mm-hmm. And he seems to be the best martial arts performer, in my opinion. Mm. And I want to give him credit, too, because while, yes, I'll, still harken on the fact that these fights still are a little slower for me and a little metronome at times. Mm-hmm. If you notice what he's doing as an actor, so he's supposed to be blind,
yep.
And he's kind of trying to cross his eyes a little bit to make it seem like he literally can't see, so his pupils are just kind of looking in a random direction. In a lot of shots, he kind of has that cross-eyed face on, visually giving away that he's blind. So the actor probably was literally giving himself the disability while performing some of these moves, because I don't think you can really see straight when you're really unfocusing your eyes like that.
Right. Or he just knows the choreography so well, he could just do it with his eyes closed.
Mm-hmm. Well, not all the time though. There's a few times where I'm like, okay, that's not a blind guy anymore.
Right. I'm not gonna throw this out there just to be a dick, but if they wanted to show that he really was blind, they could have kept that bandage over his eyes the whole time. But then, the actor probably wouldn't be able to see.
Yeah. I was hoping for that blindfold actually, but thinking about how complicated this choreography is, he could have easily hurt those other performers.
Right. It's not like Daredevil. Wow, we're jumping all the way to 2016. It's not like Daredevil where we have the benefit of having cuts, right? We're rewinding all the way to the late 70s where we have these really elongated shots where you can see the performers doing the thing they need to be able to see. You put a blindfold on them and tell them to do these really long, elongated fight sequences. There's a chance they're going to mess up. They're either going to hurt themselves or they're going to hurt the performers around them. So you really, it's fine. It's excusable. It's fine. The way that this ends...
the way that a lot of these fights ends in this sequence is really funny actually.
Yeah. So Johnny Wang gets hit in the side by the bow staff. Not hard, just a little bit, so he just staggers a little bit. And then he goes up to his men and he's like, "Let's go." And then the fight's over.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, the men try to advance. He's like, "No, we don't have a budget for this." And then they leave.
Yeah, basically. And that's a recurring theme on how most of these fights actually end. I will say though, so after this, we are introduced to more sub-boss like characters, right? So Each one of them has their own uniqueness to them. One's like this one big brolic guy. He's not, I mean, by today's standards, he looks like a normal heavyset dude, but like I guess his whole MO is he can take hits without trying.
Yeah, he would be the tank.
Yeah, the tank. Yeah,
in this movie. Yeah,
we have the normal martial artist, I guess. I can't describe them physically because they don't have any sort of like physical trait.
They all still have that same haircut too.
Yeah.
The hair pulled back in the top bun,
The
long
eyebrows.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God,
Yeah.
they really did a disservice to me.
Yeah. And then we have man with ball and bow. This guy, I can't even take him seriously because like I know that we have a lot of silly Chinese weapons in movies, right? Like I've seen a lot of shit in my lifetime, but a literal pinball is a weapon is like probably takes the cake in terms of like the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
I mean, a slingshot can really hurt somebody. You know, it looks silly because we've associated the slingshot with like a child's toy.
Right. Yeah.
And here, essentially, he's kind of, using this kind of metal pinball, but he's putting it at the end of a mini crossbow and he's firing it off. So it looks like he's a man who's playing with a child's toy.
Yeah.
Because the bow is so small,
Well, the way we're introduced to him, it always felt like that was just some sort of toy that he was playing with. Because he's hitting the marbles through, not even through, just hitting these glass things that are just hanging from a branch, and it's not it's like piercing it, but also like staying in it. I was like, oh, I guess his whole MO is that he has good accuracy. Not that weapon is his gimmick. Like I was expecting him to like be an actual guy with like an actual bow and arrow. Like that would have been more intimidating. I think that would have made more sense.
But he's got a marble instead.
It's so goofy.
It's different. I'll give the movie that. It's it's different.
Right. So in the next scene, like when they're setting up that the villains are trying to ambush the main, like the blind guy in the tavern again, you see the guy with the marble just standing outside, like all menacing, like he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you," but it's like he has a marble in his hand. Like that's not intimidating.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the setup for this next fight, though, the initial setup. And I will say, I understand limitations of budget, but I am kind of disappointed that we're still in this tavern for the next fight.
Right.
And then the fight after that. It's like, I get it. You only have so many places you can shoot, so you have to reshoot it. But I wish they just maybe shot it at a different angle. It always feels like we're just shooting at the right side of the tavern. Like the camera's always on that right side. So the background of this tavern just looks so familiar. So it's kind of hard to separate these fights from themselves.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we did have the set of the outside, right? So there is that alley, not alleyway, but the street level. Yes. I mean, we could have done something with that, but I mean, we wouldn't have the same kind of environmental damage that you have in this scene, right? Or even in
because they have the tables and the chairs and whatnot.
Yeah.
But man, like the visual of this setup is so funny because they know he's blind, so the tavern is filled with men just standing with their swords drawn, but they don't want to move because they know he has super hearing.
Yep.
So it's almost like everyone is doing the mannequin challenge, except for this guy.
Right. Oh, they did it first. They're the original meme.
Yes, these are the OG.
Yeah, the OG
mannequin challenge.
Well, the way that I do like that this movie addresses that the villains know the villains address the fact that they know that the main characters have compensated for their disabilities, right? Yes. So they set up traps deliberately to try to get an advantage over them, right? So like you said, all these guys in the room, they're super quiet. They're just doing the mannequin challenge. And, like they're trying to get the ambush on them. But because I like the team dynamic between all these guys, right? So at this point forward, we don't really have any one-on-one fights.
Correct.
It's
Yeah,
all
they,
team fights.
They always team up now.
Yeah.
Which I liked a lot because, like when you have two people with disabilities, it's kind of like you negate the fact that you have disabilities because they're working together.
Yeah. So the only reason why Philip Kwok or No Eyes, blind man, no, he has eyes, cross eyes. So the way that cross-eyed gets over the fact that he can't hear his assailants is that Lo Man can see that, and he's up there, and he kicks a table down and causes all that ruckus. And so like they're basically working off each other's strengths while compensating for each other's weaknesses. That's my poetic way of explaining how most of the fights from this point on work. Again, unfortunately, the fight just kind of ends. They just run away. They just walk away.
Nah, well, there's so it's weird because this is like a 2-on-2 fight, but then it's also like a mix of some on many, because sometimes the men will come in to try and attack, and sometimes they won't. So it's a little frustrating because I want there to be a line drawn with that. It's like, is everyone fighting, or are only certain people fighting?
Right. They're like, well, we can't get too close. I mean, he might hear us, so that might be terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. I don't understand. So I guess what happens is they realize that these two guys are actually competent in fighting together. So they're like, okay, we need to bounce so we can re-strategize. Yep. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, they're just like, all right, we can't keep fighting because his ability to hear us is too overwhelming, so we gotta leave. So that scene's over, and we do get a couple sequences when it comes to the fighting. It's between we have a lot of fights with blind man and deaf guy together, right? I feel like they team up together. The guy with no legs, guy with no legs is barely in the movie. And then
I think he realized he's like a normal human again, so he's just like, yeah. He's like tap dancing somewhere.
I'm off to get pussy. Yeah, I can actually stand again. And then No Brain isn't really. It doesn't really seem like he's actually helping them. He's more like a foible, right?
Yeah, I mean he's kind of the comic relief. He's also I guess he's kind of there to be annoying as well, to kind of get in the way of the heroes sometimes.
Right.
Because even though he's on their side because of his lack of brain capacity, he is, just kind of being an annoyance to everybody near him.
Right. Yeah. Well, what was our complaint before that? All the fight scenes happen in tavern. I mean, the next one doesn't, right? This one's in the alleyway.
Yeah. This is, oh man, like how does the mute know when to check his mirror?
Always. That's basically the question. Just always look at the mirror. He's become a narcissist ever since he lost his voice.
I like how he's wearing the mirror like on this gold chain in this gold plate. It's like he's like Mr. T.
Yeah. He's always has his mirror. So he always knows when someone's about to sneak up on him. And this fight happens between him and normal looking sub boss. And there's a little bit of weapons fight going on here, right? So because the character was a blacksmith and they're fighting in and around his old shop, so the excuses why he can just easily access all these weaponry that was in there. His weapon is a giant plier.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's what you
plier.
use. That's what you use to take the hot metal out of the furnace as a blacksmith. So I get it.
Right. I don't know what to call that.
Yeah, the other guy has like the giant hammer used to pound the metal, and then he grabs the pliers essentially.
Right. The pliers go into rips out whatever organ, and the guy dies on the spot. I like the shot of Lo Mang leaving. He's leaving camera left. He's leaving on the camera left. You see this wall, and you see a mural in the background. And the very next shot, you see another character coming from around the bend, the same exact camera angle. Like, I think they're trying to imply that it's supposed to be on the opposite side of the hallway, but because it's the same exact background, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't know what they were doing there. I don't know if they were trying to imply that moments later, now the men are coming around to see what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was very, very jarring.
Right. The set only has one side, is what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. So just to rewind a little bit, I did like some of the hand-to-hand combat going on in this fight. Well, yes, it's still a little metronome again. I like that it looks like they're trying to do like maybe Tiger Fist or Hungar, because they kind of have their hands in this like claw-like motion. And there's this moment where the opposition, I guess you could say, he's trying to throw like these hook kicks at him.
Yep.
But I don't know if you remember this. You and I both noticed that he was holding his leg up while he was throwing these hook kicks. Mm-hmm. It was almost like he didn't have the flexibility to get it that high, so he needed the help from his hands to kind of like, push even higher.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with balance, because there's a lot of that whole flexibility thing. He probably can't do it, but he's doing a sequence of round kick, hook kick, round kick, hook kick without actually bringing his leg down. That's not easy when when you have a lot of like a long sequence of choreography, and he's trying to actually have it be at head level, right? So he's like, all right, fuck this. I'm just gonna hold my leg.
They're like, perfect.
That works. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This guy's pretty good with the kicks too. So like, not to discredit, it's just but the fight's relatively short, right? It's not really that long.
And it's a shame, because once they get the weapons, it then gets like a lot slower.
Yeah.
I think maybe they're trying to imply that this kind of hammer he has is really heavy, but it doesn't look heavy the way he's holding it, so it just feels slow.
Yeah. Well, okay, so now they go back to the tavern again.
Again.
For the 50th time. And I like the setups, because like the villains know how to get an upper hand. They have these giant shields, right? They basically act as gongs, right? Mm-hmm. No, they're just gongs. They're not even shields, and they're banging on this thing so they could ambush the guy, the blind dude. Even though the blind dude has like this bow staff on him, he really is helpless here.
So they're taking like the bottom of their swords, and there's like maybe like 15 of them surrounding him, and they just are repeatedly banging on their shield gongs, thus kind of messing with his ears. Like I'm thinking of it like they're messing with his sonar almost.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah,
but the thing that's really weirding me out here is, why is he twirling his bow staff like all over the place at this point? Right,
he's doing like windmills on the ground and stuff. Yeah, man. Well, I mean, that's so he could like make sure that they don't get anywhere near him, right?
That's what I thought, but I don't know. I guess visually it just looked like he was like, that wasn't the case. Mm-hmm. I don't know. For some reason, like it seemed like they could have easily
just sliced him.
Yeah, but he's just kind of whirling his bow staff above his head. I figured just go for his legs, dude. Come on.
Yeah. Well, you're applying logic where it's more like it's more like a dance, and it really does feel like that. Like if you take the same exact sequence and put it on a stage, like live in front of you. I mean, assuming that we can still do that because of COVID. If you actually saw this, like I feel like it fits there better rather than like but in a movie format, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, visually, I like the visual a lot. You get that top-down angle. Yep. He's like kind of flailing around on the ground, and he's encircled by the guys banging their shields. It looks cool. I just like, logistically, I'm like, well, just stab him, just cut his legs, just do something. Again, you have the advantage now.
You can't use logic in this movie. You really can't. It's more the spectacle, right? So you just
you know what's kind of funny, because like, so think of it like this. All the guards are banging their shields, right? Mm-hmm. So what are they doing now? They have to wait until somebody without a shield comes so they can fight?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically.
One guy could have just dropped the shield and just started swiping at him.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I don't know. Well, I mean, that's why Lo Man comes into... Well, I mean, Deaf Guy comes into the equation, right? He comes in there again to save the day because he's compensating for his disability. And then we have our fight with Marble Dude, Marble Dude, and Mustache Man versus our two Venoms here. They I don't know, it's. I don't feel like it's a good showcase of like what Venom Dude can do, in my opinion, because he takes the marble and bow and he starts like aiming at them, but instead of aiming at them, he starts aiming at the candles in the room. And I don't really understand what the purpose of that was. Like, what was he trying to do?
Oh, right. Well, you know what's funny is the tank character comes in and comments on that tactic. I don't know if you remember that part.
To make it dark? Right.
Yeah, he's like, why are you doing that? He's like, he lives in the dark or something.
But why
like
would
that.
he even do that is what I'm saying. Like, why would he even make the room dark? What? Oh, is it to make the deaf dude not be able to see? Like, it's not that dark.
Yeah. Right. I mean, there was like 3 candles. I guess they're assuming by blowing them out, it's going to be pitch black.
3 candles light up the entire room.
Yes.
But yeah, you see, like I like the muscular guy coming into the room. I mean, I say that a lot, but when that muscular dude comes in, the tank character, he explains that to the villains that like, no, don't turn on all the lights because give them an advantage. I'm like, oh, that's smart. I feel like the writers were ahead of the audience in terms of that. It's not so bare bones after all. So the muscular guy's like, screw it, I'm just gonna take care of them. Although he's kind of an idiot because he sets up like basically a gamble with these guys. Like, well, you can hit me as many times as you want, and I won't retaliate, right? And then no legs comes in the fray, and then he just kicks him in the chest, and the guy dies.
Oh man, you jumped like way ahead of me.
No, I did. Wait, what did I miss? What am I missing here? That's summarizing the whole damn thing.
What's that?
Is that not summarizing the whole damn
thing?
No,
I mean, you summarize like the whole damn thing, but I don't know. Like, I actually liked the choreography when the 2 sub bosses come in.
Oh
yeah. So basically, it's like the guy with the bow staff who fights the guy with the double blades.
Yep.
And like, go back and watch it. It actually feels really nice. Like the choreography is really quick. It doesn't feel like people are dancing so much.
Right.
But it's over really fast. So that's all I wanted to say.
Maybe that's why I'm glancing over it.
Yeah, I just want to highlight the stuff I see where I don't think it looks so dancey, because I think there are moments of it where it feels like a real fight, but then what ends up happening is they cut it really short, unfortunately. Yep. Right. And then yes, the whole sequence with them trying to shoot out the candles, and then the tank comes in. But I don't know, like, I love the build-up for when the tank comes and he's like, okay, you guys can hit me 3 times, but then I get to hit you 3 times.
Right.
Like, I like that whole setup, because what ends up happening is No Brains comes back.
Yep.
And then No Brains and No Legs come back. And they're trying to trick him, like, oh, No Legs is gonna kick you, but they don't know his legs are made of steel or metal or whatever.
Right.
And No Brains is almost like blowing their cover. He's like, haha, his legs are made of metal.
Right.
And then they try to.
He thought that's a metaphor of some sort.
Yeah, he's like, oh, well, I've dealt with metal fists. I could deal with metal legs, implying like the martial arts style. Yeah. So there's this constant buildup of, oh my God, is he going to find them out? But then eventually he's just able to kick them really quick. And then he's like, it's real metal.
I like how, like once he gets his organs taken out of his body from that one kick, he just goes on a rampage to try to do as much damage as possible. It felt like, you can clearly tell like they're implying that this character is super strong because he bends the bow staff in half. He turns it into a pretzel. And he just starts destroying tables with complete, like no effort at all. And then he just dies standing up. Like the rigor mortis just kicks in and he just dies standing. And like, I don't know. I didn't know what happened. I thought he just had like a brain fart. He's like, oh man, that slushy was really cold. I need to like stand in place.
Well, you know what happened is, and I can kind of see why they did it like this, but I'm not crazy. So they show a shot of the table he's leaning on, and the table cracks.
Yeah.
And I guess that was supposed to visually imply he died?
Yep.
Like, why didn't they just show him fall over? We just saw a metal foot go into his upper abdomen.
Yeah.
Like,
the traditional ways of showing someone dying.
Yeah, he should have just fell over at that point. I don't understand why he was able to get up and just kind of flail his arms around some more.
It doesn't matter. Hey, you know what we totally missed out on?
What's that?
Is that the setup for this is that, before the Muscle Man comes into this scene, everyone is ganging up on this these crippled Avengers, and they just leave.
Yeah.
They just leave. Again, they're just like, whenever there's a fight and it needs to end or there needs to be some sort of setup, characters just leave.
It's
and then
weird.
they just come back as soon as he's dead.
It's like once they know they're defeated, they don't try anymore. They're like, okay, we get it. Let's balance and let's regroup.
But why? I think that's like a question. Why?
It's kind of smart, but considering that 50 men just left this tavern, you
Right.
could have outnumbered them. You could have just dogpiled them. There's no logic. It's fine.
Right. It's like, well, we have a muscular dude. He could probably beat them all up. But you know what probably works better? Is if that muscular dude and the 50 men behind us also just dogpiled them right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, who cares?
It's the movie. It's the movie. It's the way that the movie is. It doesn't really matter. So now, because we're still in the goddamn tavern,
Well, they come back.
They come back, yeah. Well, I mean, the Avengers have been here. They've been kind of in hiding this whole time. Not really. They use it as their hideout, and the villains come back, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
So they take on the big boss, right? The father of the no arms guy, played by Quan Tai Chen or Chen Quan Tai. He is clearly like the final boss. He's like the most experienced martial artist out of everybody, and he's so impressive at delivering this one tiger strike that it knocks the blind guy off balance a little bit, and they cower in fear and run away.
So yeah, oh man, I love the exit of this fight. It's so short, but it's like as soon as they realize now for the crippled Avengers, as soon as they realize they are no match, they literally both jump out the window.
Yep. They're
man.
oh fuck.
I love that exit
right here.
Yeah, right.
You know what they should have done? They should be like, wait, we're done here, and then walked out the door, just like the villains.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been great.
Like anytime they're like, I don't want to fight anymore. All right, we're time out, guys, and they just leave.
So
Yeah.
I want to highlight just like a little moment here for Mr. No Brains. So he does fight style, which is what I kind of wanted from him, where he's kind of just bobbing and weaving and kind of acting like a silly fool as people are trying to swipe their swords at him. And it's almost kind of like maybe like a drunken style or like a comedy style. I wish there was more of that, because once I found out he was going to be this foolish character, I thought that's what they were going to do with him. He was still going to be competent as a fighter, but he was going to be like a drunken idiot almost.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's more like not regarding his fight style, right? But more of his character. He's more like the foible. He's more like the character who's like making things difficult for everybody, but more like he's testing everyone, right? Whereas the no legs dude, he is basically hidden, from the rest of the villains, right? They keep him as the trump card. They don't have. I think that explains why he's not in the movie much, is because like they can't let the villains know. They can't let on that like they have another crippled Avenger, right? Because in this last fight sequence, in this last fight setup, like we're finally in a different location, by the way. We have the setup is they're in a yard full of drums and shiny mirrors, right?
Yes.
So now we're working against.
This is technically like our last action sequence. There's there's a few fights in here, but this is we're now like at the end of this movie.
Right. Yeah. And circling back to everything we were talking about before, yes, we do have like these drums are so loud that it makes the blind guy's abilities like worthless, and then we have and then we have the shiny mirrors that make the deaf guy's abilities worthless. So what do? We actually bring back No Brains, right? No Brains is fine. I guess you can call him like redeeming himself, because now it feels like he's actually like helping them out.
Yeah, yeah. Because what was happening is like at first they start shining those lights on the mute guy, and he's like unable to move forward, and so the other guy comes forward, and then they start playing the drums, and like he is now incapacitated. So then you're like, oh man, how are they gonna get out of it? Oh hey, here's No Brains, and he just pushes over the drums.
Yep, he's like, fuck it. Yeah.
It's so anticlimactic, but it's kind of funny because the drums look really big and they look really heavy, but it's almost like he just goes up to him, just kind of like casually knocks him over,
just shoves it a little bit. It's like, it goes down. Because those drums are completely worthless when they're stacked horizontally instead of vertically. That's totally how drums work. So like the setup is like now that the drums are semi being taken out and the mirrors are being broken, now the fighters can actually fight, right? They're each one of them is taking advantage of or like trying to combat their weaknesses, right? So you see Deaf Man, he's like going up to each one of those drums and like really punching holes in them so that they can't be used against them. Like I like that. I like that. Like they're working with each other. It just feels like there's camaraderie, there's teamwork, and all this.
Yeah, I like this whole sequence because it feels well written into their disabilities. Yeah. Just to reiterate what you said, they're simultaneously taking out those mirrors that shine the bright light while still kind of fighting some guys while trying to disable these drums. And then you got the No Brains character. He's kind of flipping, doing some fun stuff as the comic relief.
Yeah.
It's a nice short sequence. I kind of wish there was more of this, but in reality, this is kind of the epitome of anything you could really do with their disabilities at this point.
Yeah. Because at this point, like once we get through this element of it's not that it becomes less interesting, but I like that the villains are always trying to be one step ahead. It doesn't work, but like I think that's the most interesting element of these fight sequences. Like they know that they're handicapped, so how can we work against their disabilities? But once they take that out, it's like, okay, now it just becomes an ordinary fight scene. Like they're basically as capable as anyone who's not disabled.
Pretty much, yeah. It doesn't feel like the disabilities are disabling them anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's kind of breaking the illusion that they're quote unquote crippled, because now it's just people fighting people.
Right. So here we are at that moment. I want to circle all the way back.
Okay.
To that training montage sequence. So our setup now is Blind Dude is taking on Pinball Man. Mm-hmm. And we have Deaf Guy fighting Mustache Dude. Mustache Dude is wielding his ball and chain, and he's spinning it almost in like a twirling motion. He's spinning it. You brought this up. I didn't even fucking notice it when I was watching this. When you brought it up, you're like, oh, I know where this is going. But the way that Lo Mang defeats him is so like straightforward and kind of anticlimactic. It goes against everything that we've been taught earlier in the film, which is in the training montage, the dude punches through a spinning wheel, right, to get to his target. You would think that the setup here is like similar to that, where he's spinning the ball and chain. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you explained this. You're the one who explained it to me.
Right. So so you would think that the guy with the ball and chain is going to swing it as kind of like a shield, a defense against this guy, and it would cut back to scenes of the of him
the wheel.
Reaching through the wheel, and breaking that clay pot. And it's such a missed opportunity because that's not what happens at all.
Yeah, when you told me that, like I was like, you were like, oh, I know where this is going. Like, oh, I'm curious, and then it didn't happen. You're like, oh, I'm so upset, and I was like, what are you talking about? And then you told me that, and I was like, oh shit, now I'm upset because they totally fucking should have done that.
Yeah, it's so weird because basically what ends up happening is he kind of gets entangled in the ball and chain. Like he kind of misses from a swing. The guy kind of rolls on top of it, and then they start kind of rolling on top of each other. They kind of entangled, and then he just chokes him out with a ball and chain,
Yep, basically.
thus making the montage sequence just irrelevant. Like, what was the point of him learning to be fast enough to, stick his hands through, something swinging?
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't come full circle.
No, it doesn't come full circle. Like there's themes. I feel like you set things up, especially since we saw so many of those in the fight montage. Like there are certain themes that you set up. You would think that they would come back around, but nope. He just chokes the dude out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when that happened, you're like, what the fuck? I like how Marble Man gets taken out though. Philip Kwok, blind dude, does a bow staff cartwheel on the dude's chest, basically stabbing him in the chest as he's doing a cartwheel. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and then
nice and
when the bow staff
bloody.
comes out, you see the blood squirt up.
Yeah.
So you could see it was all it was all timed out. I like that.
Yeah, right. So we get a little bit more tomfoolery by No Brain. He's doing these, man. He's like doing like Websters and like aerials while he's tangled up in a ring. And I'm like, dude, the guy's so nimble. It's crazy. But whatever. So as the rest of the Crippled Avengers go up to approach the final boss. Unfortunately, I don't know the spoilers. Like one of them gets taken out, right? So one of them, actually does not make it to the end of the film. But yeah, now we have a fight between No Arms, No Arms versus No Arms and his father versus the two characters. It's interesting because like now I'm seeing like you're seeing a lot of the flips going on here. I feel like this is less dancey. I don't know if you agree with me. I feel like this is where a lot of the action feels a lot more faster and more like they're not going for choreography. It feels like they're actually going for actual hits. Would you agree
I'll
with that?
agree with you with the fight with the father. But what ends up happening is the fight with Bowstaff, is he blind or deaf? I forget.
Blind. He's blind.
So the blind guy fighting the guy with no arms, who is our also part of our main villain duo. Like once No Brains comes into this fight, it then becomes a super long dance.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's where I was like, oh god, this is still going. Like it didn't end. Like the beginning of this fight is pretty cool when it's just the two of them fighting, but once they have to add No Brains and they have to incorporate that ring that we saw from the montage, it like all goes downhill for me from there.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it goes downhill. There's definitely some really good stuff there. Again, regarding their physicality, because they're doing like some really impressive stuff. If you just cut it up a little bit more and just made the pacing of this fight a little bit more interesting, I guess. Oh, that's a really harsh word to put. But if they just did that, I wouldn't have felt the same way that you did, which was it's like, man, this just needs to be edited down a little. Because they go on for a very long time. Yeah,
this is this last fight sequence goes on. I feel like it goes on for almost 10 minutes. It is long.
Yeah, but it's so interesting. They're doing some really complicated stuff. They're jumping through rings, they're using rings like in different interesting ways. They're doing flips in the middle of choreography. Again, hearkening to what we said before. They usually save your big flips for the end of the sequence, not the middle. And you want to highlight those, but they don't do that at all. It's just part of the simple choreography. But yeah, a lot of what you see here, you actually saw in the previous, or it was set up in the montage sequence. See, this is how you do setup and you do payoff. And they have a little bit of that here, and this goes on for a very long time. This goes on. I
don't know how to talk about this because it just it just kind of goes on and on and on. And so I think the problem for me with this fight scene is I didn't feel any sort of escalation or buildup. It never felt like one person was getting an advantage over the other. It just felt like a stalemate this whole fight. Like one person was constantly blocking or throwing punches or kicks or throwing swings, and the other person was just like, like they weren't getting hurt from it. Like no one was getting hurt by any of these moves. Yeah. Okay, now that I think about it, yes, that's my problem. No one was getting hurt by any of ththese moves. People are just going through the motions of fighting and choreography, and you couldn't tell. Okay, was the hero winning?
Right.
Was the villain kind of on the losing side now? So it never feels like we as the audience know where the fight is supposed to go.
Right. Well, yeah, you know what? That's a great way to put it, because I think that the good dissection of how a fight sequence should go down, like a really good one, is like escalation. You escalate the stakes. There's like almost even kind of like a low point for the main characters, right? So, I mean, we do have that here. Like the low point is one of them takes a fatal blow, but that is also set up for how you diffuse the fight. Because the villain is clearly, not that he's winning, like you said before, it is a little problematic. You can never tell who's really winning between them all, like in all that chaos. But because we're just in this constant stalemate, that one character's fatal blow sets up that villain's demise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, usually though, you want the death of a character to be the fuel, right? Like he should have died much sooner, so that could have been the fuel for the other character to be like, okay, now I'm pissed. Now I'm going to take the initiative. I'm going to take the more advancement and really try to bring this guy down. That's generally, I feel like, what happens in modern storytelling. I mean, it doesn't always have to be that way. But when you have a character die right at the same time as the villain dies, and there was no escalation before that, then it feels like it kind of came out of nowhere. At least for me.
Yeah. Well, it happened so quickly, especially it almost felt like it happened simultaneously with the villain's death. So it felt like, but it's fine. It still feels not cathartic. What's the word I'm looking for? It feels fitting that this character would die, because it gives the surviving characters motivation to continue going forward, right? Because something that we say sometimes with the movies is, especially action sequences, is you want to see them have some sort of either driving force, or aka motivation, or some sort of revelation, right? Yeah. Here, there's no revelation. They're just going to continue fighting the way that they're fighting. It's more like a driving force for them to really finish the fucking movie and finish the final boss.
Oh man, but yeah, this fight is so long. I'm not trying to denounce any.
Are you talking about the final one?
No. I'm still kind of hearkening on this fight. There's so much acrobatics in this fight. Oh my god, like so many flips, so many cartwheels. Just, I love that one move where they turn into it's like a two-man wheelbarrow, I guess.
Well, I don't know.
I don't know what the name of that move is. Like when you connect head to toe. Almost like in a 69, but then now they're rolling towards him in like a wheel.
Yeah, it's like ancient art of 69.
Yeah.
Try my 69 style.
But so many back handsprings, so many cartwheels, so many.
But it's impressive.
I think it's really impressive. I see your point. But it's so dancey, and nobody is landing a blow at this point. They're just kind of there's actually a lot of side by side like backflips or like back handsprings going on, where it's like, well, what's the point of that? You're just doing it in unison now, and it's making it more obvious that it's a dance.
Right. It's definitely like that's the point of this. Like they're not. I'm pretty sure they're deliberately trying to make this dancey, right? Because it was the style at the time. I mean, that's not me trying to be overly apologetic for it, but you have to go into this movie like with that mindset. And like even though I have my preferences too, like I have to constantly remind myself, like, yes, this is not that kind of martial arts movie. But I will say though, I wish they ended the movie with this fight rather than with the father character, right? because they do set the father character up as like a menace, but he doesn't have bionic arms.
Right. Well, I think why I like the last fight with the father is because it's one I don't think I've seen before. So this becomes a 3-on-1.
Yeah.
And logistically 2-on-1s are really hard because you can just have one person waiting their turn. If it's done right, you can have 2 people attacking one person at the same time, and then you can get some really nice choreography from there.
Right.
The 3-on-1, like, this shouldn't work at all. You should just have some guy coming up behind him and just kind of karate chopping him in the back. But I think they almost made it work in a lot of cases here. I like that people are just constantly coming in and out, and he has to constantly defend against the 3 of them. And I can't recall a 3-on-1 in other films before. So I kind of really like this fight.
Well, I think it's most interesting before the third participant enters the fight. It's interesting because like once it's just between the 2 Avengers versus the final boss, it actually kind of addresses some of the problems you had in the last fight, wherein I actually feel like this guy poses a threat. Even though I didn't want him as a final boss, like I think his fight choreography is clearly shows that he's the superior martial artist out of all of them. Because he there are moments where he just knocks them off their balance and they don't know how to recover. And he's clearly more skilled than any of them, even though he is the older character here. Like he has a lot more fight IQ than all of them combined. But like I actually think that once the legs dude comes into a fray, then it starts getting a little messy. It actually gets hard to keep track of everything. Yeah,
that's the issue with a 2-on-1 and now in a 3-on-1. Like, how do you visually keep track of all these people if all three fighters are attacking simultaneously?
Right.
So I like that they have that slow motion shot where they're all like kind of jumping at him and he's kind of dodging and like throwing him out of the way. I thought that was great to show his speed, and then just to kind of slow things down a little bit.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
But one of the things also I like about this whole sequence when it's 2-on-1 and then when it's 3-on-1 is they have these top-down angles every now and then, like these kind of god eye views, and those are just so visually nice to look at.
Yeah, well, it breaks up the monotony of like these just head-on shots of them doing like their basic choreography. Sometimes that can be a little overwhelming because there's just too much going on like on screen. Like you need an overhead shot to get a lot of those.
Yeah. So my one problem though is the overhead shot reveals the issue with having 3 people fight at once. If you don't have the guy off screen, because there's moments where you see 2 guys fighting and then you'll see like the third guy just kind of like rolling around on the ground like, hey, what am I doing here? Is it my turn? Okay, let me come in with a kick.
Right. Oh man, yeah, that's true. Like you do see moments where they're just some of them are just doing these spins when there's a clear opportunity. Like you're facing the opponent's back, just fucking hit them in the back of the head or something.
Yeah.
That's again, it's not that kind of movie.
That's the danger with these types of fights when you have multiple opponents.
Right.
I think they did it pretty well here. I was actually pretty happy with this last fight.
For the most part. I mean, there's silly things in it, right? It's just straight up the dude, blind man, does a wall flip, I guess, quote unquote. And it's interesting. I actually wonder how they did it. I've always been curious whenever you see a person doing flips. Oh no, you can definitely see it. No, now that I'm rewinding,
the wires, right?
Yeah, you can definitely see the wires. It's super obvious. I mean, they probably didn't have the technology to hide it very well. So the guy does a double backflip in midair, but his momentum completely stops in the middle of one backflip.
You can see him kind of like bouncing or like bobbing in the air. Yeah, obviously he's on wires. You can clearly see it.
Right. Yeah, there's silly things like that. And then in the end of it, he hooks his legs onto the top of a banister to grab onto the villain's hands. Yeah, his arms. Yeah, and all of them basically keep him locked into place so the legs can deliver the killing blow.
Yes.
And then the movie's over. We say that a lot. We actually end a lot of our episodes like, oh, and then the movie's over. No, but this is a Shaw Brothers movie. When we say the movie's over, it's like as soon as you see the final hit, the movie is literally over.
I mean, they do walk away,
They walk away,
and then the credits roll.
and then the credits come up. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes there isn't even credits. It's just like, here's a title card of
With, like,
some
the
people
end.
in the movie. Yeah, it just says, and then it says the end. Because, you know, in older films, they would do the credits before the movie starts instead of at the end. Man, that's a weird way to end the fucking thing.
Well, that's how the movie ends, so...
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's even more abrupt because it's even more abrupt than any other way of ending our other films. But yeah, that is Crippled Avengers. I feel like we missed a lot of beats here, but also this episode got a lot longer than I thought we would
Yeah, well...
take it.
That last fight, it was going to be impossible to talk about. There is so much acrobatics going on, especially when the blind guy and the no brains guy start linking up with the ring, harkening back to what happened with the montage. It's just there's so much. Like, I can't even describe how much is going on in that fight.
Right. So, all right. So our typical format for the end recommendation wise is our usual 2 questions, but I'll add a third one, especially since anytime we do a Shaw Brothers movie or older martial arts film, I'm going to add a third one, which is, well, our first 2 is, they're normal, right? So like, do you like the movie? You know, like, the second one being like, would you recommend the fight scenes, without the film? Or is the movie context important? And the third for Shaw Brothers films is, does this hold up when you compare them to modern martial arts movies? So we didn't do it for 36 Chambers. So I'll do it the answer to that question for that movie in context for this one. I actually think that movie holds up a lot in terms of, you know, even when compared to these. So, I do like this film. It's not great. I saw some of the other Venom movies. I don't remember all of them. None of them have really like wowed me. But I do like Five Deadly Venoms a lot more than this. So, when you do compare and contrast, I'd say like watch that instead. This movie is cheesy, but like in a good way. It's like, oh, whatever, just turn your brain off. You can still kind of enjoy it. I think that the fight scenes aren't really fight scenes. So it's not that I don't recommend them without the movie. I just think that like you have to, if you're going to be watching them without the movie itself, you should watch them with the context of like, you just want to see people do crazy acrobatics. Not that you want to see people do anything visceral or anything of that sort. And what I recommend, like definitely watch the movie. Don't just watch it for the fights, because you're not, you know, unless you're in it for the acrobatics alone. And I don't think this movie holds up compared to like 36 Chambers or even Five Deadly Venoms. I think Five Deadly Venoms had a much more interesting plot. The story's way more simpler. Not way more simple. It's less simplistic than this movie. Although there are a lot of things about this movie I do like. I do recommend the movie, but it doesn't hold up, is basically the gist of this whole tirade. So as someone who hasn't even seen Five Deadly Venoms, what is your thoughts?
Oh, man. So I kind of hearkened on this earlier in the podcast. After watching the trailer, I had so many ideas in my mind about where this movie could go. First off, when I saw the title, Crippled Avengers, I kind of thought this was going to be a very un-PC movie. I thought it was going to be them almost like using disabled people in a very like exploitive sort of way. Thankfully, that didn't happen. I kind of thought that because of the title, that was going to be the case. But thankfully, it turned into, I think, something that's actually a little more positive. It's like, hey, you have this disability, you can learn to balance out your other senses based off of that, and you can become like this great fighter. So I was like, oh, cool. But unfortunately, this did not live up to the expectations that I had in my head after watching the trailer and then like kind of making up my own story from that. And if you listen to this podcast, I pretty much kind of filled in all those things I was thinking of as we were talking about this episode. I still kind of liked the movie because it was different. I mean, I don't know a movie that has disabled fighters in it. This is probably the only one I could think of. So I'll give it that unique factor behind it. It stands out as something I've never seen before. So I kind of respect it for that. But I'm not sure if I could like recommend the movie saying that I actually liked it.
Right.
Like if that makes sense. I admire a lot of the choreography and a lot of the physicality that goes into it. It's not my cup of tea though, but I can clearly see the skill behind a lot of it. I think there are a lot of moments where you can kind of see like shimmers of where modern choreography is now. Like, oh, okay, like these this fight is starting out fast, but then it's starting to go into that more opera metronome type style. Yep. I think it's still really impressive. I just it's just not what I like, unfortunately. Right. I think if I was gonna suggest fights to watch, I think you could just watch that last whole fight action scene because there's just a lot going on, and even if you like modern fights like me, I think it's still impressive to see just how long these takes are and how many flips and how many like side flips and cartwheels and all the complicated stuff going on. I think it's still impressive to watch. Right.
So does the movie hold up? I mean, I feel like your answer kind of like gives,
Yeah. For me personally, it doesn't hold up to like a modern fight movie, film, whatever that I kind of like, but I don't think that's very fair either.
Yeah.
I think this is of its time. I think it's good for what it is. I am kind of saying a bunch of negatives about it, but I still kind of like it at the same time. I think the uniqueness of the disabled fighters is like kind of tipping it over in the more positive for me.
Okay. All right. So overall, it's somewhere in between. I feel like the answer is somewhere in between.
Yeah. I'm like in the middle, but I'm more towards a recommend than it being negative. Like I don't have so many negative things to say about the movie, but it's like it's hard for me to recommend it.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's very, very true. This is a tough one, and not to say that there needs to be a black and white answer. It's like my answer is more lines like I like the movie, I just don't think it holds up. But it's like a acquired taste kind of thing. Just watch Five Deadly Venoms.
Yeah, so if anything, this movie really makes me want to watch Five Deadly Venoms now because I'm just kind of curious how those performers would fare all together in a movie that's generally received positively.
Right. I mean, anyone who's listening who's like big on Shaw Brothers or 70s era martial arts films, they're probably thinking, oh, these spoiled modern martial arts fans. It's like this is all we had back then. Like I understand what but it is very hard to go backwards. But like again, we are not any less appreciative of what it was back then, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just a personal taste, I am trying to praise the the physical performance here, but I know for me it's just it doesn't tickle my fancy. Yeah.
I'm very much in the same boat. It's all about like it's appreciation, and in the end, like I do appreciate this film a lot, as I do with most Shaw Brothers films. I mean, not to say that like modern martial arts movies can't fuck it up. I mean, we just watched Knockoff with Jean-Claude Van Damme. If you want to watch a movie where the lead star is coked out of his mind, like we're not talking about the character, we're talking about the
actor himself.
Actor.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you should watch that movie.
Is cocaine a disability?
He can't feel his nose anymore.
Oh man, he would be the no nose.
No nose.